of it were incited by people who wanted people who were showing some sympathy for us to change your opinion.
Many buildings burned in Port of Spain and all of San Juan. I could tell you that was not done by the Black Power movement. That was done by some people who wanted to create the division to make it appear as though Africans were against Indians.
African and Indian unity, a major objective of the NJAC leadership. A march to Caroni, the heartland of the East Indian community, was planned to bring the two historically dispossessed peoples together. Badez Sagan Miraj, then leader of the Indian community, was against the march. But Mr. Cambon says their faith knew no bounds.
You didn't have this cynicism among young people that you have now. We knew we could change the world.
It would become one of the defining moments of the 1970 revolution. Fane Richards, C News. They walked in silence. 10,000 people, mainly blacks, on the long march to Caroni, the heart of the East Indian community. Badez Sagan Miraj, leader of the sugar workers, threatened the marchers as they passed his home in Champlain. NJAC leaders urged calm and discipline, fully aware there was tension on both sides.
You had the mobilization against the march in the Indian community, again by spreading propaganda that the marchers would come, they would rape your women, you shut up your doors, don't leave your shops open, they would come and they would rob you.
Entering Caroni because you would have some apprehension. Because even people you consider friends were telling you that the Indians have planted dynamite all over the bridges, and when you're over there, they blow it up.
Noticeably absent, Archbishop Anthony Panton, who'd been invited by NJAC to march for solidarity. Mere hours after agreeing to join the march, the Archbishop backed out. When they finally entered Caroni, they were overwhelmed by the hospitality of their East Indian brothers. NJAC leaders believe they formed an embryonic connection through which racial unity could have been possible.
When people were welcome with juice, whatnot, shops were open, schools were open, school children lined the streets, people fell in with the demonstration, especially from Caroni to Couva, where other Indians fell in. They turned out to the meetings, they housed Africans in their homes afterwards.
With all what Badez and these people tried to divide and put the Indians against the Africans, people came out with stalls with cane juice, water, and double things to eat, given away free.
But there are those who say the attempt to reach out to the Indian Brotherhood received a lukewarm response. One reason was said to be the violence that had come to be associated with the demonstrations. Professor John Laguerre offers another explanation.
The East Indians were puzzled. They were puzzled that black people would have been protesting at a black government, because politics was perceived in ethnic terms, and in their opinion, Eric Williams had done a lot for his community.
There was also contention over the term Black Power.
The term remained a controversial term in some ways, because you had groups who said, well, Indians are not black. Because remember, black had a negative evocation about it. That even Africans before 1970, you couldn't call somebody with my complexion black. I would look at a microscope and find some shade of brown in me or something.
A later attempt by members of the East Indian community to stage a reciprocal march to Port of Spain would be scuttled by the declaration of the state of emergency on April 21st. The movement sustained its momentum throughout March 1970. And in Tobago, there was a sea demonstration against the monopoly of the tourism industry by foreign and local whites.
Because when the demonstration entered Pigeon Point, we had to rip the gate out and throw it into the sea. Tobagonians were being charged to bathe in Pigeon Point.
Then, on April 6th, the event heralded by revolutionaries as a symbol of injustice. 24-year-old Basil Davis was shot and killed by police while protesting in Woodford Square.
As he reached outside, he pulled from the police and he hugged the railing facing the cathedral. And in resisting and going and the crowd getting bigger, the police, Corporal Joshua Gordon, he pulled out a revolver and shot him because he was holding the rail.
Everybody wore red, indicating their respect for the dead they were bearing. Oh Lord, I never see so much crowd and everybody singing aloud. And when the singing was power in the hands of the people now.
And on April 21st, government declared a state of emergency. Leaders of the revolution were rounded up and thrown in jail. PNM founding member Kamaluddin Mohammed says government had no choice but to contain the movement. Still, he acknowledges that the Black Power movement changed the public perception of the PNM.
Yes, PNM got a blow. It was a big blow because in the eyes of the public and the outside world, it was a kind of indictment against the PNM.
Mr. Mohammed says Dr. Eric Williams understood the cry for Black Power. But the Prime Minister said the legitimate grievances behind the 1970 disturbances were being usurped and distorted by subversive elements. In May 1970, the Prime Minister told the nation, "These young idealists had to see for themselves the ulterior motives of those who were seeking to use slogans of black dignity and black economic power as the basis of enlisting mass support. They had to see for themselves how the Black Power slogan degenerated into racial hatred. Government may have stopped the demonstrations, but the revolution had only just begun." Fane Richards, C News. After 8 weeks of social upheaval, the nation needed time to heal. Dr. Williams claimed in May 1970 that the rhetoric of the movement further polarized the population, pitting blacks against whites. Makandal Daga has this to say.
I suppose you'd want me to apologize. I can't do that, right? I am not saying that everything that occurred was right. Good. I didn't grow up hating white people. I hated what they did.
Government had resisted the movement, but it could not deny the need for change. The National Commercial Bank replaced the Bank of London and Montreal. NCB later became First Citizens Bank. Barclays and the Royal Bank of Canada were localized, becoming Republic Bank and RBTT. The sugar and oil industries were nationalized. Caroni 1975 Limited replaced Tate and Lyle, while Trintoc took over from Texaco and Shell. The Catholic Church developed Serval. Founder of Serval, Father Gerard Panton, concentrated his efforts on alleviating poverty.
They got on to more serious things like, I want a job. And I said, well, what qualifications you have? I said, we have no qualification. So I said, well, you have to qualify yourself in some way. You just can't walk in and say you want a job.
Perhaps the most profound change was the social consciousness that arose out of the movement.
Look at the shine.
But we were somebody now, right? We were not just a moving figure on the road, right? We were Africans, right?
There was a revival of African culture and greater acceptance of local traditions. In 1971, Alicia Irish became the first black JC's Carnival Queen. The East Indian community had its own cultural reawakening.
People started wearing more Indian kinds of clothes, or what they felt to be Indian kinds of clothes. There was now a greater preoccupation with Hindi as a language.
All the years they said that the culture of Trinidad was limbo and carnival and steel pan. Chutney had to force its way and find its way here, that now today everybody say chutney as a national expression.
While there was tremendous change, the activists say there has been regression. And many of the challenges facing society today are strikingly similar to those of 1970.
Big gaps between haves and have-nots, conspicuous spending, but no conspicuous improvement in the lives of ordinary people. Laventille remains a physical eyesore, while it is the crucible of creativity.
And believe it or not, it's going to happen in Trinidad again. People is going to revolt. and it will be worse than 1970.
40 years later, there is the view that society is not as aware as it should be about 1970 and its significance.
And you are going to tell me that children are going to school and spending sometimes 15 years of their lives in the schools in this country, and they leave without knowing anything at all about 1970. They don't know who led it, they don't know what they said, they don't know what they fought for, they know nothing. What is that? Isn't that spite against yourself?
Still, the leaders of a revolution that forever changed the last generation are pleading with this generation to take up the mantle of racial unity.
And this is what we have to understand in Trinidad and Tobago. The people, not African, not Indian, but the people. And unless we don't stand united, as how these politicians have us divided now, and we don't stand united as this is what we want, we will continue living like this.
To please take a deep look at what is taking place in their country. Do not allow people to make you waste your time in foolish and negative insights about each other. Right? The problem lies in your failure to be vigilant.
The legacy of 1970 is not so much the demonstrations that crowded these streets, but the revolution in thought that arose out of the movement. 1970 was a time when people reflected on how they wanted to define a nation in its infancy. Leaders of the revolution say it's a transformation that continues to this day. Fane Richards, C News.